I know self-publishing's not for everyone. Nothing is. But if you've considered self-publishing for even a minute, listen up, because I'm betting I know what's holding you back from exploring it further or getting started. Number one, you think the self-publishing process is a lot harder than it actually is. And number two, you're understandably afraid of doing it, air quote, wrong. So I've created a new free resource for you. It's called the Self-Publishing Starter Kit, and you can get instant access to it by clicking the link in the show notes or visiting publishaprofitablebook.com/self-publishing 101. In this free training, you'll discover the exact 4 steps to focus on and mistakes to avoid so you can publish an incredible book that's indistinguishable in quality from a New York Times bestseller without overthinking, overguessing, or overspending in areas that won't make a difference. Again, visit publishaprofitablebook.com/self-publishing 101 to get instant access. Welcome to the Write the Damn Book Already podcast. My name is Elizabeth Lyons. I'm a 6-time author and book editor, and I help people write and publish powerful, thought-provoking, wildly entertaining books without any more overthinking, second-guessing, or overwhelm than absolutely necessary. Because let's face it, some overthinking, second-guessing, and overwhelm is going to come with the territory if you're anything like me. I believe that story and shared perspective are 2 of the most potent ways we connect with one another, and that your story, perspective, and insights are destined to become someone else's favorite resource or pastime. For more book writing and publishing tips and solutions, and plenty of free and low-cost resources, visit publishaprofitablebook.com. Okay, everybody, I have a new very bad habit, and I'll let you in on it at the beginning of this episode. Sarah Sawyer's debut novel, The Undercurrent, came out yesterday, October 8th of 2024, and part of my new bad habit relates to the start of this book. To say I was not expecting this would absolutely be an understatement. And I loved getting Sarah's thoughts on all things writing, editing, marketing, and the fact that she too often can't figure out how to use Instagram. I've linked all of Sarah's accounts in the show notes, as well as a link to the book so you can get yourself a copy, because trust me, you're going to want to. And now let's get on with the conversation. I have established a bad habit. I figured this out. And the habit is this. I thought it was a really good idea. And that was, I read the first chapter of the book by the person I'm going to interview the next day, the night before. Did you follow all that? I didn't even follow it.
Yes, I got it. I'm with it.
So the reason I do that is because I'm a person who's reading many books at once. Are you like that too?
Yeah, totally.
Are you? Okay. Yeah. Love that.
I got an upstairs book, a downstairs book.
Thank you so much.
Yeah.
Thank you so much. Because I'm the exact same way. And I find that if I do like a fiction, a nonfiction, if I keep them compartmentalized, I'm okay. It's when I have too many fiction going at once.
Right. Yes.
That I get screwed.
Yes.
That is the case right now. So, but the reason I read the first chapter the night before is just so I'm perfectly like fresh on what book what we're talking about. Okay, this has screwed me because every time I'm like, I'm just going to read the first chapter and then I get so sucked in. So now I'm reading 2 Sarahs and an Emma. So I have yours, Sarah Gromley's memoir, and Emma's Bluebird Day, Megan Tatey, Bluebird Day. And I have pictures of you. And so I actually have 4 by Emma Gray. Okay, it's a nightmare. So has anyone ever told you, okay, I don't like to tell authors that they remind me of someone because you're you. Reading your the way that you write is like reading Abraham Verghese.
Oh, that's so nice. Yeah.
Okay, I'm glad you take it because it's a huge compliment. So I'm glad you see it that way.
He writes such massive. Mine is so small.
No, it's I'm like, I am savoring every word of your writing. And I'm like reading it. Do you do this as a writer where you read other books and you think, how did they do this?
Yes. Yeah, often.
Okay, well,
I think, oh wow, that
so I
is
need to know how
excellent.
you did this because I think I'm
Oh,
4 chapters in
oh.
and I'm just like, was the first chapter always the first chapter? That's a question I love to ask.
Yeah, so I wrote the first chapter just as a standalone thing that was stuck in my head. And then I sort of built the other pieces around it, or towards it, I guess we could say.
Interesting. Okay.
So yeah, so that kind of just opening image has been in my mind for a long time. And it was a delight to write it on the page and have that clearly be the beginning of a story because it really just was an image in my mind of a girl
Yeah.
doing this routine on her
And
on her dead end
it's
street.
so
But
vivid.
thank
Like
you.
the thing that's it so I want to say brilliant, but it's so masterful about it. And I want to talk about, well, I'll get there in a second, but is that sometimes that I don't think people recognize how hard that is to do. To
Takes a
write
long
something
time.
that's
Yeah.
so descriptive and actually keep the reader engaged.
Mm.
Because sometimes and maybe it's just me as a reader, but sometimes I'm like, okay, all right, the grass is green and the sky is blue. Like, let's move on. But I was so in it that it doesn't take me more than a nanosecond to switch over in my brain right now. And I can see where she was.
Aw,
I can see her sitting on the fence, with the
yeah.
guardrail and the whole thing. And it's
Yeah.
just, I don't know. How did you build though out from there?
So the first part of what you were saying, I think that's really true because it's like that's a taste and pacing thing, right? Like I teach sophomores English,
Yeah.
and I teach Frankenstein, and they're like, so if I get to a page about lightning, I can just keep going, right? Because it's going to be lightning for like a couple of pages. They're like, I can like skim, right? You know?
Right,
So it's like,
exactly.
right, we have a certain, I was like, well, if you were reading it in whatever, 1818, you would have an attention span and you would read probably.
Yeah, that's a whole
um,
right.
right. But it's like, I do think it's a pacing thing. And I originally wrote poetry, never wrote a novel at all.
Oh,
And
really?
so I do think a lot about that, just kind of the language and the pacing and where your eye is going and that sort of thing. But I think in terms of building out from that moment, I started to just ask myself why that image was so stuck in my mind, right? And then
Yeah.
to for me, the answer to that was that it was about girlhood, right? About that kind of being at the cusp of something, right? Like she has this crush on this boy. She's about to be a full-blown teenager. She doesn't like the rules, like these kinds of things. Like she's just right on the edge of it. And like on the edge, on the fence, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
But so that was kind of the question that those other characters kind of came out of. But yeah, if that answers your question, I don't
It does. And I just find it fascinating because I would still be overthinking it. I
know.
really would. Like, how long did it take you are you someone who just like plods through and gets that first draft out and then goes back and layers in?
Definitely. So I wrote that between like a November and a June, the whole thing, and then sold it that October, so went back and forth with
Mhm.
my agent, a few times with that draft, added this, took away that type of thing. But then that subsequent editing process is long, right?
Right.
And it was my first time through that too. So I was kind of like, what is this?
Yeah.
So I think the amount of time that it takes would really depend on, I don't know, for me, I like to make sort of continual forward progress and then I'll cut and move and that sort of thing. But I don't like to, I have these post-it notes that are pasted on my window next to my desk. And it's like, it'll go up to, 10, 15, 20,000 words. And then it's like, back to 10, it's like you get to certain points where you're like, I'm going down the wrong road here. This is
Right.
not fruitful, right? So you have to kind of figure out. But I do, and it's the same way I used to write poetry. Like I do line by line. And then once you have enough, you can say yes, no, whatever the case is. But
how do you decide something like that? Like when you're not yet working with an editor, how do you say, wait, I'm going down the wrong path versus I'm procrastinating, right? Or I'm just overwhelmed. How do you gauge that?
I think I have a clear sense in my mind, and probably most people do, of when something feels right and good. You've kind of hit on a vein of some sort that is, I don't know, fruitful is the word I would use.
Yeah.
Like it's continuing to give you something back.
Okay.
And I also think to just sort of like, if you can remove ego from it, it's like nobody's going to die if they didn't see your words. Like it's fine. They can go, you know. And I also don't really throw them away. Like I just put them in a document that's like junk, you know.
I call it the parking lot.
Right.
Yeah.
Because it does feel bad to like delete, but if you're just moving, that's another thing.
And you might use it later.
You might. Yeah, you might.
You know,
I almost never do. It's called like,
right.
I have like junk from this section, junk from here to put back later, whatever the pages are called, but like I never put them back later.
It's like I have a whole stack of Phoenix Home and Garden magazines. I probably have 15 sitting on a table over, like I'm looking at it, because I think one day I might go back and look at that sofa or that wall. The level of dust, Sarah, on the magazine
recipe, you're like,
right. Even though over the weekend I was cleaning out a bunch of stuff and I found knitting patterns, and I thought, oh, maybe I should keep these. Everything's online now.
Yeah, no.
If I need to know how to knit a hat, I'll just. I don't know. It's crazy.
Yeah.
So the first person I heard about bread loaf from was Joanna Rakoff.
Oh, yeah.
I was like, what are you, when she talked about bread loaf, I was like are we eating? What are we doing? I had no clue. And I've kind of come to understand that it's sort of like, it reminds me of Iowa Writers Workshop. I'm not comparing the two necessarily, but like they're programs for people who are really, would you consider it more literary?
So there are two, when people say they did bread loaf, there are two things. So the thing I did was I went 5 summers and I got my master's from there. Yeah. And then there's also the Bread Loaf Writers Conference.
Exactly.
What Rakoff was talking about. And that's more like, you're a writer or perhaps an aspiring writer, and you would go. It was like summer camp for writers.
Yeah. Yeah.
So yeah,
but is it at the same place?
Yes. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So it's actually such a magical place. I met my husband there.
Oh, you're kidding.
Yeah, it was fun. So it's run by Middlebury College, and it's up in the mountains in Vermont. And it's this, I can't even describe it. It's just sort of a bunch of yellow buildings that pop out in the middle of the woods. And there you are. And it's amazing. It's an amazing spot.
Well, and so it's been a while, right? What kind of kept you from writing? Because this is your first novel.
Mm-hmm. So let's see.
You mentioned you were doing poetry, but.
Well, I mean, not in any kind of serious way. I think, I had kids, and that takes some time.
It does.
It really
Just a
does.
bit.
And, was working full time and all that kind of thing. And then I think when I turned 40, I just was sort of like, well, I might as well try to do this thing. So I wrote a novel that was bad and tried to get an agent and did not succeed. And then I wrote another one and like another one.
Your kid, really?
Yeah. So I, and again, not in any way that I imagined this would be the outcome. I just was sort of like, why not, and really enjoyed doing it. I do say my first one, I just think I gave myself like a very time-consuming lesson in how not to do. Right?
Like what?
I learned a lot.
What? Share.
Well, it's funny because I still do some of the things that I did in that process, but I think I'm just better at knowing what doesn't work. And yeah, like if I haven't gone back to that draft in a long time, but I'm sure that if I did, there are a lot of things that I do like to do, like play with perspective and that kind of thing, but it's like too much or in a soup or hard to follow or not distinct enough or something, you know. And I'm still bad at just plot, right? It's hard to make the characters. I just want to put them in a room and have them have feelings about each other. But, something has to happen at some point.
And that's what's so interesting to me about reading the beginning of this book is that it's like, I mean, first of all, the title, the undercurrent, as someone who loves water.
Yes.
I was like, ooh, it's kind of a play on words. Is it?
Yeah.
Does it become a play on words a little bit?
It does. Yeah.
Okay.
It does. Absolutely.
So the POV, the multiple POV. I know. I'm like, okay, I'm going to have to carve out the time because and I'm going to have to, I feel like they're like my new kids, all these books. Like you get an hour and then you get an hour.
Yeah.
So the multiple POV, I'm so fascinated by people who do multiple POV well, because I feel like I do multiple POV well in my own brain. Like I don't even know who I am. And I don't mean writing books. I just mean 1 minute I'm thinking as me and the next minute I'm thinking as a different type of me.
Sure.
But I remember talking to Ava Delira about this when she wrote Exposures and how was it always multiple POV for you or?
Let's take a quick break.
If you're just getting started on your self-publishing journey, it can be overwhelming to consider all of the tasks in front of you. Even if you've been listening to podcasts and reading and watching videos on how to self-publish, putting all the bits and pieces together while worrying about whether you're doing it correctly can be quite stressful. It helps to have a clear list of action steps so you're confident in exactly what you should be doing first, second, and third. Luckily, I've outlined all of this for you in my program, Publish the Damn Book Already. And for a limited time, as a podcast listener, you can get 25% off with code AUTHOR25. This course provides you with a step-by-step blueprint to a published book that is indistinguishable in quality from a book published by the big guys, while saving you time, money, and excessive handfuls of stress-relieving salt and vinegar potato chips. We tackle everything from how to find an incredible editor to partnering with a top-notch and reasonably priced cover designer to uploading to distribution channels like Amazon, bookshop.org, and bookstores. If this is going to be the year you finally get your book published, head on over to publishaprofitablebook.com/publish and get started. Remember to use code AUTHOR25 to get 25% off.
Yeah. So actually, it's funny that you should say 1 minute I'm me and 1 minute I'm another me, because the one of the impetus behind the book is I had just read Madame Bovary and I love that novel. And when I read it this time, I thought to myself, well, it would be interesting if this novel were written by a woman, and it would be interesting if Emma Bovary, is treated in the novel as quite frivolous and I don't know, just goofy. But if she were instead a frustrated, creative person, like in the novel, in Madame Bovary, she, I think, starts to try to paint, like she's trying to do all these things, but does not succeed. Obviously.
I haven't even read it. I'm just full of
it doesn't end well for poor Bovary. Like
a
lot of she suffers. But I thought, like what if this were a creative person who was, stymied in her life by all these other forces. And so I kind of, the three characters and the three main characters in the novel are sort of different versions of what a thinking creative woman might become. And so they're kind of my imagining of that result. But they're just split into characters. So
well, and what's interesting at the point I'm at is that I'm finding as a reader that I get really curious about how do all these people relate to one another, because they've all become important, which I don't think is easy to do. It's easier to write from one perspective and say like, well, why is my reader going to be rooting for this particular character? But I'm already rooting for 4 right now.
Yeah.
Right? Because I'm curious.
Yeah.
It's like
Yeah.
you drop these little breadcrumbs of something's gonna happen.
Yes.
So,
Yeah.
so was that a later thing for you?
I do want you to root for them. They're really flawed and they're gonna do some things that make you sad. But
Oh
I
God.
think you're not gonna. Yeah, it's my neighbor was reading my neighbor's colleague of mine, and he came up to me the other day. He was like, "No, B, no."
Oh, B, I was gonna say, is it gonna be Gus? I feel like Gus is gonna.
They're all, yeah.
Okay.
I mean, yeah. But I think, yeah, right. There's a quote that I love, and it's Walt Whitman, and I'll probably mess it up, but it's like, I'm as bad as the worst, but thank God I'm as good as the best, right? Like it's like that idea of these people are flawed, but all of us are flawed. And some of these characters are flawed in some really troubling and kind of horrible ways, but not because they mean to do harm, right? So it's I think a version of the scenario that I think many mothers find themselves in. You know, you fiercely want to protect your own, right? And you might, when push came to shove, do some things that weren't what you should do, right? And
yeah. Does writing in this way, like with these characters who are flawed, does it drain you or does it give you energy?
It's funny because I'm a teacher and we teach some hard books, right? And the kids will, we give content advisories and all kinds of things. But I always say to the kids, at the end of the day, it's a book, right? You can put it down, right? You can close it right up. Like and you can then be grateful that that's not your life, right? Or if it is your life, you can be grateful someone shared something with you. You're part of a common human experience. So yeah, I don't find it draining. I think stories are a thing that reminds us how human we are. And I love that about them. I'm not afraid of it or saddened by it. I often feel very sad when I'm reading a book. My daughter tells a story that is so funny of when she was little. She's 18 now, but when the book A Little Life came out and I was reading it, like I would not stop reading. I'm reading and reading. And I was making chili and I was stirring the pot and sobbing. And she was like, "Why don't you just put that down?" I was like, "No, I love it. It's so good," crying.
Like Joey Tribbiani in Friends, he puts The Shine. Did you ever watch Friends?
Yeah.
He puts The Shining in the freezer.
Right.
Like you can put the book in the freezer.
Right.
But I mean, we do. And I think that's such an interesting phenomenon. Like, because I'm always intrigued by what I react or respond to in that way. And like, why is that making me feel so whatever the adjective is?
Right.
I mean, sometimes it's just so beautifully written that it's a piece of you that you maybe haven't even discovered yet that's resonating, right? But it's interesting because sometimes the characters seem or are so different from the reader's day-to-day life.
Oh, absolutely.
That it's like, why do I resonate with this? Why does this make me sad?
Yeah. And you only, you can only live your one life, right? But I think when you read, get access to all these other forms of experience. And if you're reading well and open enough, I think they should move you, but yeah, no, absolutely. It's the best, I think.
So what has surprised you about, you mentioned like, I didn't know what this whole thing was going to look like when it comes to editing and the publishing and the marketing, and it comes out tomorrow, right?
Yes. Yeah. Tomorrow.
It's the 8th, October 8th.
Yes. I literally know nothing about the book world. So everything is a surprise to me.
It might be good. Ignorance is bliss.
I don't have any expectations for how it will go, but like that there is a whole world on Instagram of people talking a lot about books is very surprising to me. And now I'm sort of like I don't even know how to use my Instagram. I'm trying to put things up. It's crazy. So that has been surprising. The editing process was really surprising to me. to get, and as a teacher of writing, I have been telling my students about this because I was like, you get an editorial letter, right? That's do all these somewhat significant things, right? And then you get these documents back and forth that have, 900 changes, 1,200 changes. I had never used track changes before. So I was like,
okay,
what fresh hell is this thing? Like trying to figure out that kind of thing. So just trying to get all that stuff in order. And then go into copy editing. I mean, it is mind-boggling how much.
It's a lot, right?
Yeah. And how many people are so lovingly treating your story is extraordinary. I think it's extraordinary.
I love that you see it that way.
Yeah.
Because I think it's so easy. And as both an editor and a writer, right? I have experienced both sides. And I know how it can feel to open my own manuscript and be like, oh my gosh, like, do I even have any business editing other people? Because there's so many changes. But I love the way you said that. So like lovingly putting care into the final product.
Yeah. And it makes me look very differently at books around me, just to know what that really is now. They do look different to me. And seem, I mean, I obviously love books, but seem even more special and important and to be valued than they did before. I think editing, it's funny because you're all of a sudden on the same side of all these people who are working in service of the story. It's like not really like they're working for you or on your behalf or like that you need to fight with them or if you disagree or anything.
Right.
You're just working to make that thing better, that thing that, as any piece of art like doesn't belong to you really once you make it. It's kind of out in the world and doing whatever it does. I don't know. We'll see. Because
I love that too. I think it can be so common for authors to feel, understandably so, a big sense of ego in their work. So it can go to one degree or one direction or another. One direction being, this thing is really good. Why aren't more people reading it? Right? There's that.
Right.
And then there's the other side, which is like, oh God, I don't even want to release it. Like, what if this is crap? What if everyone hates it? What if I get a bad review? Yeah. And it feels like you're kind of detached from that.
A little. I mean, it's not true. Like if my editor would tell you that, we disagreed often over little things, sort of, you should take this thing out. And I would say, no, I don't want to. And then I would have to explain why. So it's not that there was no ego involved in that. Of course there was. But I think, I've talked to enough authors now too, that will tell you, don't look at Goodreads, whatever you do.
Oh, right.
Or don't,
Goodreads is for readers, not for writers.
Right. Like you should just not worry about that. But it is, obviously it's not enjoyable to read something not good about your book. Like there was something on Instagram the other day. Someone was like, oh, I read that and I thought, meh. I was like, well, meh to you too.
Well, meh to right. That's the thing.
Like, I don't really care. Yeah.
Well, people read, any of the classics or any New York Times bestseller, any of it and say, meh.
Right. Yeah. Or you show, I always show kids, contemporary reviews of, say, The Great Gatsby or something. And it's just like, what a piece of swill, or something like that. Not that I love
that they would use the word swill, right, in a contemporary review of something.
Right.
Just like,
but yeah, I don't think, and I think part of it is that, I've been hardened a bit from my work with the teenagers. They often have thoughts and feelings about me that, okay.
Not to mention being a parent, because, your whatever. Teenagers and they have thoughts and feelings and they're not afraid to share.
No.
They're not afraid to share. So
and sometimes they're right,
sometimes. And that's when I just quietly walk out of the room. But the editing, I agree with what you're saying. Once you've been edited too, you start to look at things differently.
Yeah.
Because it really is a partnership.
Mm-hmm, definitely.
And you realize how much of a collaboration it requires.
Right. And it's such a gift to have someone look so carefully at your work. I think that's, I don't know. I mean, if I go through a stack of papers for my students, I'm looking carefully, but not that carefully, right? Not in that way of, oh, we're gonna, continually collaborate till we have this thing right. I'm sort of like, I'm gonna tell you how you didn't do what I asked you, and then we're gonna move on.
You're gonna tell them it's swill.
Right. Yeah.
Right. What are you most excited about what are your plans from a marketing standpoint? Did you want to do something big? Did you not want to do something?
I have a fun party tomorrow, which I'm excited
Good.
about. Yeah. And I was just telling my daughter, I was like, more people are coming to this than came to my wedding. Like, this is really so fun. So
that's amazing.
I know. So I'm excited about that. And people, I mean, I work at a school. I've worked here for 25 years. And people have just been so, so, so kind. And, buying the book and reading the book and telling me. I have one colleague who would come in every day like, okay, it's definitely Gus. Like, oh, wait a minute. Now it's definitely like,
yeah.
They were, really into the play-by-play, which was awesome. But just people have been so kind and generous, and it's just felt really just nice, to
absolutely
have this moment. And I'm excited. I'm going to Philadelphia, not this week, but next week. And so in my dedication, I thanked my two very favorite English teachers, and they're coming to that reading, which will be so nice. I'm just so excited to see them. Even one of the translators, I used some translations of some Greek poetry throughout. And one of the translators wrote me and told me he had pre-ordered the book and he was so excited to read it. Just like those kinds of things. It does really feel like, I mean, and quite literally that could be the only people who buy the book, but even so, you feel very buoyed by their enthusiasm. It's just a really nice kind of moment for me. I'm just enjoying.
Let's take a quick break.
I want to take a super quick break to ask you, have you ever wondered where authors get great professional mock-ups of their books without spending hours on Photoshop or hiring a designer? In less than 10 seconds, Mockup Shots puts your book into over 1,200 amazing settings. And now, for a limited time, they are including their exclusive video mock-up system. Mockup Shots is what I've used for years to create 3D mock-ups of my own book covers and my author's book covers, as well as professional attention-grabbing images that are great for social media. No technical know-how required. Mockup Shots usually costs over $200, but I have a special offer for you. It's faster, has more features, more images, and is getting better every day. They're celebrating this new and improved Mockup Shots by offering a 60% discount on lifetime access with lifetime updates. It's a great way to get an unheard of price on a product that will get eyes on your book, increased sales, and that you will end up using all the time. You can get this limited time offer with the link in the show notes. And now back to regularly scheduled programming. For sure. And I think it's, it's being marketed as, is it being marketed as thriller, or is that? It's
like literary suspense, I believe.
Okay. Because I was going to invent a category for you. I was going to invent a category, which I think literary suspense is a category. I was going to invent literary thriller because I'm like, the literary piece to me is so important because it's just amazing writing.
Yeah. Thank you.
It's amazing.
I do think if you picked it up and thought thriller, you would be disappointed because it's not that. It does have like twists, but it doesn't have the kind of cha-cha thing going on.
Yeah, the cha-cha. We're missing the cha-cha. And as someone who doesn't read cha-cha, I'm thrilled because, no pun intended, because I love literary fiction. And I love it because it's just, I think I appreciate it so much.
Yeah. Same.
Recognizing
and that's what
how
I was trying to write, so I'm glad.
Yeah, but it's got that suspense
It's just
aspect to it where it's interesting because I want to read fast because of the suspense aspect, but I won't. Like I could, but I won't because I want to savor. And that's how I feel about Abraham coming full circle. That's how I feel about Abraham Covenant of Water.
Right.
It's going to take me a long time to read
great.
the Covenant of Water.
Yes. Yes.
Because
and you can really savor it. Yeah.
Exactly.
That's
like I read 3
story.
chapters and it's interesting. That's a book that so far I am remembering where I am. Like I can put it down for a month and read some other things and go back.
Right.
And it's just like coming home to, I don't know, something I'm looking forward to coming home to. I just get excited about.
I read that book last summer, and in summer, because I'm a teacher, I have the luxury of time, and I just sort of dove into that, well, so to speak.
Right. Another water theme.
Stayed there. Yeah, that's a wonderful book for sure. Yeah.
So, well, undercurrent really isn't a water theme, but I think of current and then I think of undercurrent and never mind. I just see this is what my brain does. I was really thinking of undertow, but it could be undercurrent.
You're on the right track.
Am I getting there? I'll figure it out in a few chapters, I hope. Okay. So last question I always ask everybody when I remember is what are you reading right now? Or what have you read recently that you loved?
Let's see. I just yesterday finished the novel James, which is the Percival Everett. Which I really enjoyed. I tell everyone this year my favorite one was Martyr by Kaveh Akbar. I loved that book. Oh, I love that book. And that was one I read and I was like, oh, you are really good at this.
Really?
I definitely could not do what you just did. That is just a really wonderful book.
That's going on.
Both of those books actually just were on the National Book Award, I believe, finalist list that came out yesterday or the day before. And let's see, in similarly recent time, one that I loved is The Marriage Portrait, Maggie O'Farrell. That's like a fantastic book that I tell lots of people to read because I loved it. And I'm about to read Swift River by S.E. Chambers. That's the one I just started last night, and not due to her, but just due to myself. I fell asleep after like a page, so I'm going to restart because I was sleepy. But I'm on a panel with her in a couple of weeks, so I'm excited about that. Yeah, so I thought I would.
I love this so much because I've not heard of any of these 4.
Oh, great.
Yeah. And I used to feel real bad about that.
Oh,
like I should know all 42 million books that are available.
No, you don't need to know those.
But I get so excited because it's just, and I think it continues to show other authors. There's always going to be someone who hasn't heard of your book.
Right. And well, this is like in the blurbing process, which I don't know if you've ever talked to writers about, but that process was so funny to me. I'm like, wait, I have to get what do you mean? Like,
can we talk about that? I said last question, but now I got to come back around. Can we talk about that?
Sure. So a thing among 9 million other things that I did not know about was that writers generally get their own blurb. So you have to like write to, whoever and say, and I'm lucky enough to have some writer friends. So I was like, hey, pretty please do this for me. Because I was like, what would be the incentive? I'm a debut novelist. Like I can't return the favor for you,
Well, a lot of people are just paying it back though.
Right. I guess.
To someone who did it for them.
Paying it forward, right?
Paying it forward. Yeah.
Yeah. But I also thought to myself, like, I don't think I've ever read a blurb. So maybe I'm just like a weird reader. Like, I don't think I would ever pick up a book or not pick it up based on a blurb because I don't think I've ever really noticed them. So
that's funny.
It's really funny. So I was like, okay, so bookstagrammers I didn't know about and blurbs. So I'm just
so there you go. It's a whole new world.
Yeah, it's a whole other world.
But that's something that people, because you're with Zibby Books, which is fantastic, right?
Yeah,
I love that. Yeah. I love her. I love them, the whole thing. And a lot of people, though, when they're traditionally publishing, whether with Big Five or with a smaller traditional press, they assume that the publisher is going to do all these things for them, and they're not. And it's not a ding on the publisher. It's the fact that we don't know. Authors don't know.
Right.
So they go in with this expectation. Hey, I went with you because, and it's like, well, that's not what we do. Right.
Exactly.
So that felt weird. So how did that tie to these? Did that tie to any of these authors that you just mentioned in some way?
Just to say that I picked them up probably because I saw them, written up in the New Yorker, or someone told me something. Like I don't know why I pick up some books as opposed to others. I really don't. I think it just comes through in like the zeitgeist or something. I have no idea.
I know. I've been thinking about that a lot lately too, because I think about how much energy I put into, like, when I'm at the dollar store and I'm looking for organizing supplies, I'll be like, do I want this container or do I want this container? And we're talking, I'm at the dollar store, Sarah. Right. So we are not, but still I'm like, well, which one?
Yeah.
But then I'll debate that for 13 minutes. And then one person will say, or write, like, this book changed me, or this book. Right. And it's immediately in my car. Like, no,
I'm in,
and it can be that one and another one. So now you pay attention to blurbs. Is that?
I do. Now I'm like, whoa, how'd you get that blurb?
How'd you get that blurb? Yeah. So I was talking to Sarah Gormley about her memoir, and she's self-published, but she has a blurb from Joe Piazza, who wrote The Sicilian Inheritance. And I'm like, how did you get that?
Right.
I mean,
honestly,
it's just,
I was like combing through, who do I know? I know these people. And then the Gillian Flynn one, I ended up writing her like a personal letter, and I don't know why she said yes, and bless her, because it's a lovely blurb.
It is.
I was like, thanks so much, girl. But so that was amazing. And Chris Whitaker, same, like, I'm not sure why he did that, but he's been so lovely to me. So,
and I think it's surprising who says yes and who says no.
Yes, no, totally. Absolutely.
Right.
I think you more get ghosted than people. So people don't really say no.
True. You're absolutely correct. And it's rarely honestly about you.
No,
that's what I find.
It's usually like, I don't have time. I'm doing this. I'm doing that. That's right. Fine.
Or their email got lost in cyberspace, or they didn't know how to read their DMs on Instagram. Like, it happens.
Yes, for sure. For sure.
I have messages on, where are they?
Well, I don't know where they are. So if you're sending I was like, I handed my phone to my daughter yesterday because I was like, I should make a post. I went to the Saratoga Book Festival. I was like, I should make a post. And then I was staring at my phone, and I just handed it to my daughter. I was like, or you could make a post.
Just do it. Like, just do it. They do it so fast.
Yes,
I mean, social media management should be all done by young people, because it's just second. Their brains are wired differently, and they just get
like
it.
Putting songs in there.
Oh, all of it.
She has
things and loops, and I know it's. Oh my God. Well, thank you so much for coming, and congratulations. Really, I hope it goes. I know it will go great, and I look forward to watching it all. And I certainly look forward to finishing reading it. I'll message you. I'll send you a DM when I'm finished. So
and I will find it. I'm on it now.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. This was really fun. I appreciate it.
Thank you so much for tuning in. If you enjoyed this episode, this is your friendly reminder to follow or subscribe, leave a quick review, and share it with someone you know has a great story or message, but isn't sure what to do next. Also, remember to check out publishaprofitablebook.com for book writing resources and tips, and to see all the ways we can work together to get your book out into the world. Again, thanks so much for listening, and I'll talk with you again soon.